okay, how do I buy a house in Cabo? How do I buy land? What are the pros and cons of each? What can I expect? Can I own land as a foreigner, et cetera, et cetera? If a lot of this is ringing a bell for you, you're in the right place. So I'm going to leave some time for questions at the end. So if you have a notepad, or you can even type them in the chat in the Zoom, so you don't forget, I'll definitely go over them at the very end. But just so we don't mess with the flow, sometimes I can get off track. And so I want to keep this as concise as possible, hopefully under 40 minutes, 30 minutes. So anyway, I'm just going to jump right in. Buying process in Mexico, it's a little bit different than it is in the States. I would say there's a lot of misconceptions about how it all works. There's a lot of confusion about this thing called a fideicomiso. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. That's how it's pronounced, fideicomiso. And in very simple terms, it acts as a living trust. So the same as it would in the States or Canada, the bank here in Mexico. So let's say I want to buy a house. I'm American. I'm not a Mexican citizen. And the only way I can own a property here is if I do it through a fideicomiso, which is a bank trust. So how that works is when you submit an offer on whatever house you want, you work with your agent and you decide on the property. And it doesn't matter if it's a condo, it doesn't matter if it's a house, it doesn't matter what it is. If you're a foreigner, you must buy in a fideicomiso. And so how that happens is, again, you submit an offer, and through that process, your closing agency and your real estate agent will work together to help you draft up this paperwork. It's a big, thick piece of material. It goes over all these different scenarios of what could likely go wrong. And it basically just makes sure that you as the buyer are covered. It's the whole reason behind this thing called the fideicomiso about the trust is years and years and years ago, Mexico, foreigners actually weren't allowed to own property. And that created one of two things. So first of all, Mexico as a country lost out on so many dollars of foreign investment because foreigners couldn't own. And then it also created this sort of underground thing where people were finding kind of back alley ways to get a hold of property and paying Jose down the street to buy in their name. And then, of course, this house is in Jose down the street's name. And then you as a Canadian, as American, as any sort of foreigner, when you come down and try to, live in your house or stay in your house, Jose down the street is like, oh, well, this title says my name. This is my house. So obviously it created a lot of problems. Mexico as a country stepped away from that and actually amended their constitution. There's a part in the constitution that says, don't quote me on this, for lack of better terms, foreigners cannot own land in Mexico. And so what happened, and I think it's 1970s or 60s, they made an addendum to the Constitution to say that you actually could. And it had to be through this thing called a fideicomiso, which again is a bank trust. And so the bank acts as your fiduciary, and you are the sole beneficiary of that trust. And so you have all the rights in the world. You can remodel it according to HOA, of course. If you're in a condo, you can't tear it down. But if you have a standalone house, you own it through a fideicomiso, you can do anything you want to it. There's no limits. You can sell it, you can remodel it, you can light it on fire. It is yours. And these fideicomisos, the entire life of them, and the entire life of the trust is 50 years. However, so let's say this, and I hope you guys are following. If I'm going too fast, just type it in the chat. If you purchase a house from another foreigner, so let's say the house was owned for 30 years. So it has a 30-year chunk on the fideicomiso. When you go and purchase the chunk, you acquire the last 20 years because the life of the trust is 50 years long. And so again, if you purchase a property from someone who's held that trust for the past 45 years, then in 5 years, you will need to go and renew your fideicomiso. At the end of each 50 years, nothing happens. It's not like the government comes in like blazing with guns and takes your property. That's not the case at all. You simply go into the bank, you pay a very nominal fee, and you just renew your trust. The fideicomisos, people get confused about them. They think they're leases. They're not a lease. You are the sole beneficiary. It's willable. And it actually provides you as the buyer a lot more protection in the case something were to happen. So let's say our friend, our amigo, Jose down the street, comes along and says, you know what, this is actually my house. And look at this title I made on Photoshop saying it's mine. Well, what you can do is with your fideicomiso, you can go to whoever you need to go to, the hacienda or the courts or wherever, and say, actually, Jose down the street, this is my house. This is my fideicomiso. It's signed by this person, by this notary, by this lawyer, et cetera, et cetera. It's 50 pages long. Good luck trying to fight it. And so it actually gives you more protection as the buyer. It also is really great because it's willable. And so as you're creating your fideicomiso with your closing office, with your agent, whoever, you have to list who your house will go to in the event of your demise. So if in the unfortunate event something happens to you and it passes down to your kid, it's in your will, it's in your trust. And so it's super simple. And that's actually an amazing thing because as a Mexican citizen, it's a very complicated, lengthy process in some unfortunate cases to try to get that property, that house willed to who it needs to go to. And this is a very laid out, clear, there's no arguing this house is going to, your daughter, your son, your wife, your husband, whoever it might be. So that's the fideicomiso. I would say that's probably the biggest hang up and fear and just the questions and confusion around that. And so it's not scary. Let me check the chat real quick. Okay, I'm going to go over these questions actually at the end, but thank you for asking them. Okay, so moving right along. Visa requirements. Okay, so you do not have to be, we already went over, you don't have to be a Mexican citizen to buy. You do not have to have a temporary or permanent residency visa to purchase in Mexico either. You can buy land, houses, condos, whatever, on just your regular old visa you get when you arrive into the airport. And so that's called your FM3 visa. And you can absolutely purchase on that. That's no big deal. It happens all the time. However, there are some tax implications and benefits for having your temporary or permanent residency when you purchase in Mexico. So this is going to be a little bit more than the basics, but I think it's so important to know. So when you purchase a house here on your tourist visa, it's important to start the process to become a temporary or permanent visa holder. It's not necessary, but the reason why it's so important is when you go to sell your house or your condo or whatever it is, there's this thing that you might have heard of before called tax. And down here, the capital gains tax is pretty hefty. It's 35%. However, when you're a temporary visa holder or you're a permanent visa holder, you get a $200,000 tax credit. So that means if you buy a condo and it's $400,000 and you sell it for, $400,000, let's just say in the rare event it doesn't appreciate. What's going to happen is if you are a temporary or permanent visa holder, you don't have to pay tax on that first $200,000. You just have to pay your capital gains tax on the last $200,000. Does that make sense? So that's why it's important. So it's possible to buy on a tourist visa, but it's highly recommended to, start the process on your temporary visa, on your permanent visa as soon as possible. If you need any help with that, I can definitely send you over our contacts. We do this with a lot of people. I own a property management company and we're in development. I'm also a licensed real estate agent. So we're helping lots of people go through these, the visa processes, the taxation strategies, all that not so fun stuff. Okay, moving right along. Pricing. I just want to go over this really quick. One of my clients left a really sweet review in the Facebook group, and he mentioned how I was able to get him his condo for like $30,000 under asking. And so I just wanted to address that here. There's definitely more wiggle room in this in Mexico when it comes to pricing than there is in the States. That being said, every seller is different. And so you never know, where you might catch someone on good, on bad, on, I don't care, I'm just throwing this up on the market to see what happens, or, I'm trying to get out now. You never know, and that's why it's so important to have a good real estate agent who's not going to throw you through hoops, and try to just waste your time with 20 different counter offers back and forth. That never works. So you just never know. Some of the developments, they don't have any wiggle room. That's what it is. Maybe if you pay all cash and you don't do any finance, like seller financing, you could get a 5% discount, but it's just all across the board. Every single situation is different. It's a way different market here than it is in the States. So my best advice when it comes to pricing and knowing where to put in your offer is just find yourself a good agent that really knows the market. That being said, I want to talk a little bit about financing, about mortgages, about seller financing. Probably the biggest difference between buying in Mexico versus buying in the States or buying in Canada is leverage. Cabo is a 95% cash market. So that means if you're thinking that you can put 3% down and get a mortgage for 30 years at 3.4 APR like you can in Canada and the States, that is not happening. And I'm so sorry if I'm breaking your Cabo dreams right now. It's just not possible. There are financing options available, but they are less than amazing. Just being super honest, so first of all, let me just go over. So if you're an American citizen, you can qualify for a mortgage. You have to put 50% down, and then APR rates start about 9%. If you're a Mexican citizen, of course, it's different because you have a credit history down here. But again, like I said, you have to put 50% down. You can finance the rest, but those interest rates they start at 9%, and they are based on your US or Canadian credit score. There's less lending options for Canadians down here than there are for Americans. And there are a handful of scenarios where I have seen financing that really made sense. So, and I'll just run through a couple of those. For example, if you're looking into buying into Cabo as a financial investment, you're not as much looking for the emotional side of things. You don't really care about, vacationing by the beach. You just want to have a financially savvy investment, come down once or twice a week, and really use it as a vacation rental. You can kind of make those high interest rates make sense if you really work with someone who knows the rental market super well and can kind of guide you towards an apartment or a house where you can see really big returns. And that is possible. You're definitely looking at a higher ticket, so that those, I would say, the extremely lucrative investments, when you take out a mortgage and make everything make sense when it comes to profit and loss and income over the month, are in the 700,000 US dollars up to 5 million. And so it is an option, and I have seen it work really, really well for some clients. But just to touch on that, financing, I'm looking at my notes now. Okay. Before I go into building, I'm going to answer these questions in the chat about buying. Malcolm, you may have also a new fideicomiso. Yes. Mm-hmm. You may also purchase. Yes, you are right, Malcolm. Instead of assuming an existing trust, you can totally extinguish the fideicomiso from whoever you buy it and start new. And this is recommended if there's only like 5 or less years, then it is better to just, start over, get a new fideicomiso. You don't have to worry about it for the next 50 years. I would say if there's, 10 plus years, then I would just leave it, because you never know and how long you're going to wanting until you want to sell again or whatever. Because it's a more lengthy process, it sometimes can extend your closing. Another note is closings take a bit longer down here. You're looking at about a 3 to 6 month closing time frame. You can also establish a Mexican corporation as a U.S. citizen, and there are several key differences tax-wise. Yes, you are right, Malcolm. I didn't really want to go into this here because this is more just the basics, like catch-all, buying as a newbie, but there are some tax strategies by creating a Mexican corporation as a U.S. citizen, buying the property in a corporation, and then you can basically expense anything on the house and it counts against your capital gains. However, some banks down here, like HSBC, they will not allow you to buy as with a Mexican corporation anymore, and it's just a mess. It's super confusing. So if anyone has questions about that, I guess just send me a message and we can go through that later. How about asking how many of these participants already know how to buy in Mexico and what they want to discuss? Okay, well, the topic of this call is buying and building in Mexico, so that's just what we're going with. In your example of paying tax, there's no taxable event. However, due to peso exchange, yes, again, like the peso exchange, the dollars, those are more specifics that I just didn't want to cover in this event because it's just more of the basics. For newcomers, if you're just thinking about buying or building in Mexico. Okay, so I'm going to move on to building now. First, the key differences between buying and building, in my opinion, are patience and also just, patience. I'm just kidding. You definitely have to be more patient when you're looking into building down here. The process is just much more lengthy. In Mexico, in general, things just take a little bit longer. I'm not sure how many of you on this call are locals. I mean, this, again, was geared for more like newcomers. You're just dipping your toe in the water. You don't know much about anything about buying, about building. But I think the key differences are just patience. There's definitely a lot more due diligence that you need to go through when you're thinking about developing a property rather than just, buying a turnkey home or a turnkey condo. I would say that, there's just a lot more due diligence. You have to think about a lot more complex, like longer term things when you build. You also have to have a bit more expertise in the area. Down here, it's pretty obvious to see, what's a good deal and what's a beautiful, well-maintained condo or community versus, going in and seeing a plot of land with maybe no houses around it, and trying to picture that and seeing if this is going to be a good investment in 10 years from now, or, if this, like, what problems could arise in the future once you're already built. And then you also have a lot of the complexities that come along with finding a good architect, with finding a good contractor, and, with keeping the project on track, making sure that you honestly aren't being ripped off. It's more common than you'd think, especially in this area. A lot of people who build down here, they're not here all the time, and they don't necessarily, care or have the experience necessary to vet as many contractors and architects that they need to. And so, for example, just from personal experience, so we're developing 2 lots out close to the East Cape, not quite the East Cape. For those of you who don't know where the East Cape is, it's like 15 minutes outside of San Jose. We're developing right on the line where San Jose stops and the East Cape begins. And we have interviewed a total of 33 contractors. And I can't even remember how many architects. We finally found our architect, but you guys, the range of expertise and the range of pricing from these architects and contractors are absolutely mind-blowing. And I cannot imagine where we would be right now if we went with the first contractor that we spoke to, if we went with the first architect we spoke to. We have learned so much through these lengthy processes. And unfortunately, you do hear these horror stories. I'm going to use one that Rick told me just the other day, where a woman paid $25,000 to have someone do her pool. She wrote them a check, she paid them cash, and he disappeared, and she did not get her pool. And that kind of thing does happen, even in a lesser degree of, getting a quote for a retaining wall that's, quoted $50,000 from one contractor. Discouraging. Give us hope. Can it be done? Oh my God. Oh, that's really funny. Also here in Cabo, we have problems with water availability, which you need to keep in mind. Yes, of course. So I'm really sorry if this is feeling discouraging. I don't want that to feel like that at all. We chose to build because, first of all, you get your dream home. You get a hand in every single thing. I get the walk-in closet the exact way I want it. I get my shower. My boyfriend gets his fish cleaning outdoor area, whatever. That is absolutely the most fun part of building, but also it can be an extremely lucrative investment for the financially savvy. If you have some time, if you have some patience, you can really make a lot of money by developing a project down here. So that's the encouraging part. I didn't mean to just jump into the negatives right away. There's definitely just so many amazing pieces of developing, but again, it takes patience, and it really takes having someone, if you aren't super familiar with the area, just to walk you through. That's what this my development company does. We make sure that you are on the right track, that you're using the right architects, that you're using the contractors that aren't charging you $300 per square feet if you don't want a multi-million-dollar mansion, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Touching on the water availability problems. Yes, so water is an issue here. We are in a desert climate. I'm just going to mute some people. Welcome everybody who just came in. So yeah, we are in a desert climate. We have a water plant here in San Jose del Cabo, and we also have some of the communities here have desalination plants. For the most part in San Jose del Cabo and the municipality, we do not have severe water issues. However, when you get to sorry, I just got a message. When you get out towards the East Cape, everything is off grid. So that means that you have a water being trucked in by these huge tanker trucks, and they fill huge 5,000 gallon cisterns. And then you use that for 2 weeks, and it happens again. The water truck comes back out. And then same with, living off the grid. You have solar panels, you have batteries. That's a whole nother can of worms that I'm happy to talk with you about privately. The water issues that you really see are in the Cabo corridor in El Tizal. And the reason why that happens is because the water is shipped from the water plant in San Jose in these big pipes down the corridor. And sometimes along the way, for whatever reason, the water gets shut off. And so the neighborhoods like El Tizal, they are relying on their cisterns, and that maybe those cisterns don't get filled up all the way. And so it ends up people are just out of water. And that does happen more in this, the communities, again, in El Tizal, the Cabo corridor area. That's a really good question that you should be asking if you're buying in that area. You need to ask the developer if you're buying in a condo or the HOA, okay, tell me about the water issues. I've heard about it. And of course, your realtor can help you with that as well. Yes, Rick said about building, you get exactly what you want. and built in equity. Yeah, absolutely. If you have some time, if you have some patience, if you're willing to kind of jump through some more hoops, building can be an amazing investment, especially the way that we're seeing Cabo go right now. I mean, the market is just exploding. I have never seen so many tourists coming down. I mean, a great testament is just, people on this call. I mean, you're here because you're either thinking about buying, you're thinking about building. I'm getting messages almost every day, just questions. Hey, I'm from Canada. I'm looking to get some sunshine. Should I buy? Like, I'm thinking about buying a little condo, maybe renting it out on the side. Just lots and lots of action. There's huge developments being built out on either side. So we have San Jose, we have Cabo San Lucas. On the Pacific side, we have like Pescadero area. There's huge development, huge movement going on over there. And then over here on the Sea of Cortez side, we have the East Cape. And again, there's just huge movement, huge development, hotels, resorts, like lots and lots and lots of just mind-blowing money. Cabo is just like, I mean, it's about to explode. We've seen just unreal amount of action down here. We are experiencing a bit of a shortage for houses in some price ranges, which is really interesting. Okay, we have 10 minutes left. And so now I'm going to open it up to questions. Feel free to type them in the chat. You can unmute yourself. Again, this is just basic information for newcomers coming in, just dipping their toe in the water. We're not going to get into some of the more complex things that go into buying and building because that's just way longer than a 30-minute seminar. But if you have questions, please, now is the time. And if not, that is totally fine too. I think I'm going to hold these seminars maybe once a week with different topics. I want to do one with vacation rentals, talk a little bit about that, long-term rentals, pros and cons of each. We can do stuff about property management, different pitfalls and things that we've seen down here with properties. And I can do one about how to choose the right architect, how to choose the right contractor. Maybe we can have Rick come on for that one. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited for just to see the direction of this group as things kind of cool down and the stoplights go from whatever they are now back to green. I want to do some in-person meetings too, so we can all kind of get to know each other in person, take advantage of our beautiful town. There's some really great spots, downtown San Jose. I'm a big foodie, so I think I've tried probably all of the restaurants down here, so we can have some fun meetings when Art Walk starts back up, all that. Do you have an example of land costs and construction costs for any projects you are doing? Thank you for opening this communication up, and I hope many more get involved. Thank you guys for coming. So an example of land costs and construction costs, it's so across the board. If you want, Glenn, you can private message me and tell me your budget, and I can give you, and not only your budget, you don't have to tell me your budget. You can tell me how much, I guess it is your budget, how much you want to pay for land, and then what you're thinking of for your house. And then I can kind of give you a very rough estimate of pricing per square foot. In general, how long to build a rather simple 2,000 square foot house? Again, it's really hard to say. Short answer, around a year. Long answer, depends on how much you want to pay for workers. And if you want to get a really big crew in, if you're on a super tight time crunch, then you could do it maybe in 8 months. But if you have a lot of changes and, 6 months in, you decide you want, a fourth bedroom, then it could take up to 1.5 years. If you find a really terrible contractor, it could take infinite amount of time. There's just so many variables. But please go ahead and you can send me a Facebook message after this. Any of you guys can, and I can happy to shoot through different scenarios with you. Does anyone else have any more questions? It's a beautiful sunset for those of you who aren't in San Jose. It's gorgeous. Just out of curiosity, do you live here, or are you visiting, or are you somewhere else in the States or in Canada?
States.
The States. I live here in San Jose. Awesome.
Amelia, do you have time to explain a little bit about that investment idea if you did have to get a mortgage? Like, what do you mean it could work? Like, you could actually rent it out enough to make up like the interest difference, or how does that work?
Yeah, of course. So it kind of depends on, what mortgage you get. If you get a longer term mortgage and those monthly payments are lower, and you can maybe put a bigger down payment on, or down payment into the investment, you can get a lower monthly rate, then you can make up the difference in the nightly rate that you charge for your property. So, if your mortgage payment is, I don't know, even $5,000 a month, let's say, and you own a multi-million-dollar property and it rents out for $1,500 a night, I mean, you can do the math. You would only need to have it rented 50% of the month to make some cash. And if you get super popular, if you have a good management company like Hideaway Cabo, you can really do some things to make the occupancy higher and get that cash flow going. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I was trying to figure out the math, I guess, and the numbers.
Yeah, of course.
Get it.
Feel free to, of course, yeah, feel free to private message me, and I'm happy to run through different scenarios with you.
Okay, thanks.
All right, you guys. Well, thank you so much for hopping on. I really appreciate everyone spending some time with me. I want to do, maybe a weekly seminar with different topics, have some different guests. But other than that, I hope you guys have a great week, and don't be strangers. And I'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.